and I see folks eating. I hope folks watching from home don't realize that that's not your dinner you're eating. You're probably eating your lunch or your breakfast even. So thank you for being in the space. Thank you. What may be a 4-hour meeting, you're here, and the same energy you bring to young people every day, you're bringing to this conversation. So just please know, I appreciate you and I see you. And I don't know if we can show that to our community, but I hope our community sees this as well. Thank you. And thank you for your leadership, Catherine.
You're welcome. Yeah, and for the people who can't see from home, we have an actually full room. So that's really awesome. We're excited. Yeah, so getting ourselves started today with just general housekeeping. So folks who are up in the gallery, there are note cards kind of hanging around. Maybe there's someone up there, just hold one up to show them for people who aren't sure what the note cards are. Thank you, Terry. Yeah, some of them. If you have notes that you need to pass down to the table, our note runners for today are Gary and Jen. So Jen, can you give a wave so that people know where you are? This Jen, you Jen. Oh, yeah. And Gary are up there. So just get those notes to Gary or Jen, and they will get them down to David here at the table. For ITA, our caucus space, if and when we go to caucus, it is across the hallway, and any ITA member who is here at a time of caucus is welcome to join us in that caucus. It is one small classroom that we'll get to more quickly if everybody goes. You know, we'll figure that out. Do you all need you need to announce your caucus space, or are you guys good on that?
Yeah, we're good.
You're good. Okay.
Yeah.
And then we have a couple of note takers just for, you know, people to expect notes from this meeting and the summaries from, we have Aurora and Gretchen and Lauren are all working on a joint Google Doc to create a written transcript for us of everything that's happening. So we speak clearly and all that good stuff. So looking down at some of our updates on proposals to review, I know that our last session, we identified that we would need to write a proposal for ICSD micro-credential programs. And Mary, I know that you said responsibility for that too. Is it today, or do you want another day, or?
Probably should use this so everybody can hear. There we are. I just want to echo an appreciation for all the caregivers and teachers who facilitate those conferences today. Thank you. I have a draft. It's a real draft. It documents our current practice from the MOA and transfers it to what could potentially go in the contract.
Okay.
So I think we might, as I was drafting this, I was having a lot of thinking that a dialogue would be helpful and input. So I would suggest sharing this with all of you for a first read draft, and then we can maybe have a working group to flush out what doesn't make sense or not. What
do you want to pass that now, and then we put it on an agenda for next week? Since we have
Next week, yeah, today was primarily
so
Saturday.
maybe before we leave today, we just make sure that we get copies of that.
Yeah.
Okay.
perfect.
And then we also, as our little working group on union district relations was working on a couple of joint revisions, we also identified that we currently have contract language around the use of mailboxes for union business, but we don't have anything about the use of email for union business, and that would be, since most of our work is done by email at this point anyway, that would be a useful thing to draft. David is planning to draft that, but I think we're gonna look for the 20th as a date to potentially have that draft available for. Hoping, David, I just hope that by the 18th is the ambitious date. Did that seem doable?
It is now.
If something changes. We do have a couple of one joint revision. So we met last week, myself, David, Bob, and Ladira. We had 3 proposals that we were working on. 2 are still in draft, and we're gonna keep working on them next week. But on the next page of your agenda, you have proposal 52, tenure denial protection, which has been tentatively reached agreement in the committee. So now it's time to bring it to the big table and make sure that people are feeling comfortable with this year. So why don't we take a minute to read? And then I'll summarize for the folks at home.
You good, Bob?
Bob, do you want to summarize it since you kind of, it's your department? Kind of just summarize this for the people at home.
Oh, yeah, sure. Thank you very much. I do want to thank David and Catherine and Gladira who really helped collaborate on this. It was, I think, very good meeting, got a lot done. So the proposed language really is to do a couple things. The first part of it is to make sure that teachers and administrators know the exact tenure date that we're working with. And you might think that that's an easy thing, but with long-term leaves of absences sometimes that are taken, or if a teacher has received tenure somewhere else in New York State and they forgot to put that on their application, it's another opportunity for that type of information to be understood and to be worked upon. So there's no like surprises 4 years down the road. The tenure denial section is really to give teachers the ability to better understand the reasoning behind the district's decision, either to not invite them back for the following year or to extend their probationary period. That's what a JULO agreement is. And it also specifies that if by March 1st they're not notified, they'll be paid 80 days pay, the equivalent of, and that's sort of past practice in this district and is also outlined in the current contract. But we made it very clear how that would happen, the procedures to undertake for that. So it's a lot of words to do something fairly simple, but thank you very much.
And are we in agreement on this one?
Yeah.
Wonderful.
You.
Okay. There is an updated proposal from the ITA. We looked at proposal 23, which was about academic freedom and teacher protections for teaching controversial subjects, I guess is the way, thinking a lot about the current political climate that we're in, thinking about the mission and vision of the school district, and just our members have really been asking for assurance that, doing the job that we've been charged to do by the district, that the district has our back in that. And getting that into the contract to make sure that that's there. The original version that we wrote had some ambiguous language that wasn't necessarily in keeping with kind of some of the conversations that we've been having with Mary. We revised that language. So really guaranteeing that teachers can make appropriate curricular decisions, but that those curricular decisions and any instructional materials that they choose to bring into their classrooms to supplement district approved curriculum have educational value, be aligned with New York State standards and district approved curriculum, be culturally and linguistically responsive in line with the NICEAD framework, suitable for the age and maturity of the students. To this end, teachers are trusted to arbitrate these values, provided that their selections do not violate district policy or New York State education.
Well stated.
And if this, do we need to talk more? Do we want to?
No, we're gonna review this more at the next meeting, or are we trying to
Well, it's just we can review it more, we can just say, I mean, this is kind of the first time you're reading
Yeah.
this new draft, so you can just say like.
Yes.
similar to-
Yes.
Yes, we agree, or yes, we want to talk.
We want to talk more. I want to, again, focus on salary today, but this is what
Yeah.
I'm really excited about. And don't be surprised I have your back, but,
Okay.
I hope you have mine too.
Okay, okay, so we will talk,
Yeah.
put it on a future agenda.
Yeah.
Okay, and so seeing that we have no withdrawn proposals today, we have the ICSD counter proposal on salary. So that brings us into that salary discussion.
No, we've been looking forward to this. Yeah, we've been looking forward to this, and I think I can't see it. I feel like I'm under some kind of a roof here, but we're gonna put some things up on the screen so folks in the audience and at home can see as well. And if I could step back, I wish for the team to know that we spent a significant amount of time reviewing your proposal again, in seeking to understand it more, and we analyzed and looked at numbers and we crunched numbers. So what you're going to hear from us today is our attempts to answer the questions or your priorities and your goals. We think we made a pretty aggressive approach to doing so, both financially and in the language as well. Some of the things that we heard at the last conversation was your efforts and our efforts to increase retention. So we're going to highlight how we think that this new proposal will do just that, particularly for the mid-career folks. We heard that number 2 in the years 10 to 15. What can we do to incentivize those years? And we think we have something that's pretty aggressive and novel for our school district, something we've never done before. In addition to the longevity incentives, which we'll talk about, the overall compensation package from my perspective, is aligned with the total dollar amounts that you had proposed, and I'll tell you how we got here. It may take us a little bit longer than what was proposed, but I want to share with you how the total dollar amount, and I will share why our rationale for why we wish to do this over the course of an additional year, as we plan. So again, our goals were to be aggressive with our compensation proposals and packages, to incentivize retention and to incentivize folks who've been with us for a significant amount of time. With that being said, we're shifting from the 2-year commitment to a 4-year commitment. We're proposing 4 years. And as we crunched the numbers and as we analyzed your proposal, and correct me if I'm wrong, when we looked at the total dollar request, it was around 8.14% in year 1. I think we mentioned 8% increase in year 1 total dollar amount when thinking about your salary grid and the total dollar amount it would take for the school district to meet that proposal, about 8.14%.
8%.
8%. All right. The 1.4. All right. So 8%, around 8%. And in year 2, it was around 4. I'll stop with the point stuff. It's 4, 4, and 4. Assuming that it was a 3% COLA increase, or if the cost of living was at 3%, then we're looking at a total dollar amount around 4% in years 2 and 3.
Are you asking for clarification?
Yeah.
No, that's not how it was. It was 8% year 1, 8% year 2, 8% year 3.
So 8% additional dollars in each year.
8% each of 3 years.
Okay. Then we did misunderstand that with the way, because we were thinking it was around 20% over 4.
You said 20% over 4
Yeah.
years. We didn't propose for 4 years. It was just for 3, and it was 8% each of those 3.
8 to 24. All right. Our proposal is around 19.68, close to 20% over 4 years. And that would, and again, for us, an 8% increase in year 1 is something, particularly with the current climate, particularly if we're not using fund balances and reserves, and we talked about that the last time, using fund balances and reserves to fund recurring costs is just bad fiscal management. And that will create a structural deficit in our budgets that will at some point catch up to the school district in a way where we have to exceed the tax cap or reduce salaries by dozens. I mean, reduce positions by dozens. And that's happening in school districts all over our state, region, and country. So we are not inclined to use fund balances to fund recurring costs. And while we had a significant increase in state aid this particular year, that is an aberration. So we were not assuming a similar amount of state aid increases from year to year. So our 20% proposal over 4 is something we know we can do, staying within the tax cap, and something we can do without making significant reductions to our workforce. And that would assume a 4% base salary increase for everyone over those 4 years. And we'll transition to talking about what that looks like as far as longevity, which from my perspective, is something that we've been seeking to do for many years now to incentivize folks to stay in. Zach, you want to share more about the longevity? Yeah, Dom, you want to talk about longevity?
Sure, happy to do that. So the longevity, just to give folks kind of a basic understanding of how that works. We set this up in 5-year increments. As folks hit their 5-year anniversary points at 5, 10, 15, 20, and 25, there would be incremental payments. So the first 5-year increment, as you hit that based on your anniversary, there would be an addition of $750 to your base salary plus the 4%. If you hit your 10-year anniversary, it's double. It would be a $1,500 addition to your base salary plus the 4% and so on. In real simple terms, that's how it works out. We wanted to add that as sort of a predictable way to determine compensation. I think Zach can add a little bit more to that in terms of how that might be reviewed if you want to do that at this point.
Yeah, I mean, I think the details to this. So essentially what we're trying to do, we heard you all loud and clear. You have a desire to implement a step system. In interest of trying, and one of the key rationale points that we heard from you is wanting to be able to project out what your salary is going to be in X amount of years, right? How are folks going to know? How are they going to know that they're actually going to get a boost in a certain number of years? So what we're trying to sort of bring to everyone is a lot. We right now on our starting salary, we have lanes based on how many credit hours you have. And so what we're really trying to create is our lane and longevity system. So a system where every time you hit those 5-year metrics, you're going to get a boost to your base salary. That's going to compound for another 5 years, and then you're going to get another boost. Now there's like I haven't scrolled down here, but there's some like very nitty-gritty details about like how these are things Catherine and I talk about, like this person hits this many years in this many days. So we tried to get out, there's language about that, but the bulk of this really lives in the, completing those 5-year windows and then getting compensation for that plus, so you're getting the compensation plus 4% in the years thereafter. One of the reasons that we're able to do this is that this puts we have the 4% base, but then it puts a rotating group of folks that get this, that are at those 5-year windows. So rather than having 500 and something members all hit that at once and put a undual strain on one budgetary year, it spreads that out over several. That's sort of the structure and rationale of how we're able to achieve that.
You want to do the whole thing?
Let us hit these last two pieces and then we'll take some questions. You want to talk about the certification area and the tenure needs as well?
Yeah, so and we can talk later about the implement. This is why I didn't slow down. There's a lot of language about like if and when and how it works. We're happy to discuss that more for implementations. But then we have 2 additional certification or incentives. So one of these is, and I can speak to this from the human resources side, is trying to incentivize folks to achieve additional certifications in high need areas. We're really interested in, and we can even, we're open to discussing every 2 years or so, what are our highest need areas and how can we get our really great teachers who are already with us to maybe go explore those areas. We have certain areas in our teaching force where we can often find a lot of certified folks, but sometimes those folks would make really great teachers in other certification areas. So we're interested in exploring an incentive program on what that could look like if people achieve that and if they're willing to be active teaching members in that field. So to be real specific on this, what we're looking for is folks who are willing to say, I'll go get a special education or secondary math certification, right? And I will teach in that area. Not necessarily just I'll go get it, but I'll go get it and teach. And we want to look at how we can incentivize that. So we have a proposal there. And then our last proposal is just and this speaks to just trying to attract and retain teachers. It's just a one-time $1,000 tenure bonus, essentially, where folks who earn tenure, when they come back at the beginning of the next school year, they get a bonus, and then when they finish that year, they also get an additional. So it's 500 divided into 2 chunks. So those are sort of a quick summation of our
Yeah.
4 salary pieces that we're trying to present to you all today.
So again, about 20% increases over 4 years, with the base pay increase of 4% each year with these significant longevity bonuses that go into the base.
Thank you. We got the original version of the counter proposal, which had the first 2 pieces, but didn't have the second 2 pieces. So we spent about an hour and a half as a team yesterday analyzing those first 2 pieces. The others are new. So we'll see a bunch of questions coming in because it's the first time we're seeing them. But we do have, from even just the first 2, we had a number of questions. And the first question is not even from our list. It's from like my not being a numbers person and trying to, you know, just in my like, well, what does this mean for me? Because I think I'm a really good example to help us understand the longevity incentive. I am currently, I believe in I will start either year 22 or 23 next year.
Congratulations.
What does that mean for me? Like, can you explain to me?
It can.
Yeah. This is important. And
We
and
built-
you didn't mention the calculator
We
as
did,
well.
we just built oh, let me make sure this isn't shared. Let me make sure I share this with,
Yeah, we have a,
They-
while he's pulling, we have a calculator where everyone can put in their salary.
yeah, and
what
we
they
can
are.
share this with anyone. And I can send the link out, or I can even put it in the chat in a moment. But we built a salary projection calculator. So it can show you exactly what happens.
Can you show us a year 15?
Yeah, so.
Like, sorry, let's just use that. Sorry,
Sure.
I'm just interested.
So what we have is if someone had 0 years of service, target retirement date in 2047, right? So they're going to be out, this is year 16. You can see right there what they would make.
Going to give us another number and an arbitrary.
No, I think
Yeah.
I'm actually getting distracted by all the colors. And
Oh.
I think that I need it explained like I'm in kindergarten.
Sure. Okay. So there's a couple things with this calculator. I don't want to get like, it's just putting in our 4% raises for the first 4 years. And then it assumes, this is not foreshadowing anything. It just assumes 2% because that's like the lowest it's ever really been going out beyond that. Okay. So what this tells here, and let's make this like, let's say, we'll just use this example. What this is saying is next year, the person who's finishing, they had 0 years experience. They started this year. Next year, they're going to make $55,422. They're going to get their 4%, right? When they stay with us and they go out 5 years, they're going to get, they'll be at 64,000 plus that $750, right? Plus in this 5 years out, it's 2%, right? That, and then it basically rolls over that next amount and goes into the next year. And there's the math on it there. Yeah.
Can you pick a 20?
So that you on that year 5 or year 6 that you showed? It was 66,890.
Let's take a look. It's just running, it's taking from a spreadsheet. So if there's a,
Not to be taking the 750 into account.
yeah, you might be right. Well, I'll check on it, but
Well, yeah.
So
it
So
should be
here's
good.
what I'm trying to.
Yes.
Okay, so Brian here next year, he's currently making a little bit less than me because he's in year 19.
Yep.
I'm in year 20. Hypothetical. Next year, when Brian starts year 20, he's going to have $3,000 added to his base salary in this model.
When he completes year 20.
Okay, so when he completes year 20. But if I'm already in year 21 and I'm completing year 21 next year, I'm getting nothing until year 25.
Well, I mean, you're gonna get
Just the
the
4%.
percent, yeah, right, and then,
So no incentive.
oh, like a retro longevity, is that what you're saying?
Right.
That's not built into our models.
So then how does, so one of the problems we identified, we currently have people in year 7 making less money than people in year 3. Like, just because of when they got hired, the way that their salaries have worked over time. We currently already have leapfrogging. And our proposal is meant to equal out that leapfrogging to ensure that if you have been here longer, you are making, and you have the same number of credits, that you're making more money than the person with fewer years of service. So seeing this and seeing that, knowing that in between the years, there's not a great deal of difference from one year to the next in terms of years of service. If someone who's entering year 15 is getting a substantial bonus to their base salary and someone entering year 16 is not, how are we valuing that person who's entering year 16 who just got leapfrogged by someone with fewer years of service in their experience? That we can't do that. Thank you. How is that key, like, how is that a retention tool for the people who are not on the 5, like hitting the 5 years exactly?
A couple of things. That's a question we can answer together. Because I'm thinking we created some of the issues that you're describing, we created the last 2 times we negotiated, as we tried to put more into the base salaries of the folks starting. So I know I've been a long time. We knew this was coming. We talked about this at the table. So let's not act like we're surprised that some folks are leapfrogging others. We did this purposely and by design and agreed to do so. And yes, we now need to figure out what to do going forward. If there are questions or suggestions around how to use this total dollar amount to even that out some, we're open to that as well. Agreed, this could create some other compression issues, what we're proposing. And we can adjust the dollars to make sure that everyone feels valued in this new model, if that makes some sense. But there is no answer to that question other than we have a proposal to do this that will incentivize a lot of folks. I think there are 85 people right now who will get that significant bump next year. And to do the work over the last 5 days to figure out how we can adjust it for everyone, it's just a tough call. It's tough. We can spend more time doing that if that is the wish. If that is the wish. But the total dollar amount is what I guess I'm tight on. Like, we can't go beyond the 19.68% over 4 years. And how we distribute that is something we've always done. And in the past, we decided to do that for the folks who were coming in newer, knowing that that would create some of this leapfrog.
I really just wanted to clarify
Yeah.
that is actually like that I was reading this proposal correctly, that would be the natural consequence of this particular. Okay, that brings me to many other questions. Okay, so how does your counteroffer how do you feel it addresses competitiveness and attractiveness compared to other districts, particularly for mid-career teachers and particularly for neighboring districts, since we know that we've seen many of our colleagues go next door in directions 10 to 30 miles away?
We can do some, I think, and even as a team, we've tried to stay away from comps because comps get complicated. So if we're being asked about how we compare to others, we can pull the forecast 5 information and show that our average salaries are not only comparable, but very competitive. So as an answer to that, I think our salaries are competitive as we are today and will become more competitive as we look at a 4% increase over the next 4 years, plus this longevity. And as we continue to talk, I'm hoping that, this will be new, that we are allowed to do some kind of innovative negotiating as our neighboring districts are able to do. In other districts, the superintendent has the ability to set the starting salary for folks who are hired or rehired to come back. And yes, I'm thinking about 4 or 5 people that we've lost to a neighboring district because the superintendent was able to set a salary, negotiate a new salary. So this is something we can address even further than what we're already addressing with this pretty aggressive overall compensation package. And again, I've been saying it for 15 years, and that superintendent before me would say it too. If folks want the average salary for Ithaca City School District teachers compared to the average salaries of others, we can do that. We can do the median, we can do the mode. And depending on your perspective, folks can argue both ways, but I am confident in that because I want our salaries to be better. I'm confident when I go out and say, look at you bring your numbers and I'll bring my numbers, and our salaries are competitive, if not above many of our other school districts. And I'm also asking for that ability to negotiate. Because those educators who left us because they felt like they were going to get a better deal somewhere else, I could negotiate their salaries coming back. If you agree.
We just have a long list of questions and we're trying,
Yeah.
and you've already answered some of them in some ways, so.
We have a number of questions actually here that have come up, so some of those too. So a number of folks in the gallery were wondering, so we see that you're offering the 5, 10, 15, 20, 25 year bonuses. We also see that, you can hold this up, you are offering an incentive for folks to get certified in high needs areas. It would appear that the cost of getting certified in those areas, like the bonus that they would receive, is negated by the cost to get certified. So if I'm thinking, I'm gonna leave this position to go here, I'll get $22.50, but I'll spend that $22.50. What's gonna make me feel like a first year teacher over again when I could just leave for another district and get paid and be in that district? Right. So that was a question a number of our members brought up.
Sorry, I didn't do it in the microphone. I said, especially if there's also a lane cap, considering that our lane cap is currently, our credit cap for incentives is currently at 90 graduate credits. So to get an additional certification, people who would be in a position to do that additional certification, like their head is above water enough to consider a second certification, are usually people who have significantly more graduate credits. So to make the investment, but then not be able to get the in-service credit and the graduate credits for that because of the cap, that's also
So two things. One, our proposal actually will pay folks if they get their certification and then they teach in that subject area. So we're actually willing to put money into that. That being said, if you all want to have a counter proposal about how that could work, our ultimate interest is in finding a way to take some of our really fantastic teachers that are in our school district, and if they're interested and want to explore another subject area, finding ways to make it so that it can happen to them and they can be compensated for it. So we're absolutely open to discussion about better ways to do that. Our proposal is really meant to start that conversation and get that sort of onto the table as something to think about.
Did you just say that you would pay for the one-time stipend upon successful completion?
And that goes into the bid.
Wait, for certification area?
Yes.
Yeah, and then we said there's I'll share it again.
Yeah, this is a good, thank you for letting us clarify this one, because this is.
Right, I'm like, have you done the costing on the cost of getting a certification locally? Because my understanding is that unless you're doing it through like the national board program, there aren't places around here who are letting you do just a certification without being enrolled in a full program, which means we're doing the programs.
So we're happy to explore all of that. The cost that we're looking at primarily is the cost of not having those folks in our organization, which is often that's the cost that we've looked at. So like for us, it's worth it to do this. But this also, if folks are willing to teach in that additional certification area, we're willing to pay them so they would get that back year after year. It's not like it's a one-time and gone.
Okay, but you haven't looked at the cost locally.
Cost of
We've
grad
seen
school.
some.
Is the question behind the question, are we prepared to pay for grad school?
Yeah.
No, we haven't gotten that
yeah,
far.
yeah.
We are incentivizing folks who do the grad programs to come teach in hard to fill areas. And as I look around, there are a lot of folks who've got additional certifications in here and have taught in different areas And we had no ability to pay them for getting those additional certifications to teach in those areas. This will allow us to do that.
And would this automatically go, so I am a dual certification holder. If I were to go back to the classroom tomorrow or under the next contract as an elementary teacher, because that is my other certification, would I qualify for this?
It's not a hard to fill area.
Oh, it's not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But if it were special education? then-
Yeah.
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 You trying to do that, Cal? You trying to go back?
No, we're paying for it.
We're not paying for grad school. Through this negotiation, all right.
Okay. Okay. So you have a bullet point that if you agree to teach at least one class per semester or the equivalent in the newly certified subject area, that would be the eligibility criteria for the additional certification.
Yes.
But at elementary, they don't teach classes. So what would this mean in the world of elementary school?
I think we're open to a conversation about that. This is, again, I want to stress that this is, we're most interested in, is the ITA open to this discussion? And then we're happy to sort of, much like we have with a lot of our other items, delve into these specific questions and figure out something that could work.
Okay. And this is all just like us trying to understand the thinking behind this. So currently, elementary gen ed is not a hard to fill area. But if we start pulling our elementary gen ed into sped, which is a hard to fill area, like if I have both of these certifications and teaching in one will make me more money, I'm gonna go teach in one. How is that not just going to create unfillable vacancies in elementary ed?
Hopefully it doesn't. And if it does, every 2 years, we're going to determine which areas are hard to fill. And it may be an elementary classroom teacher is a hard to fill area, and they will get this incentive
But every 2 years?
every 2 years. That's what we're proposing initially. To do it every year, we could be open to that, but I think that would be too soon.
Yeah.
I know, this is fascinating.
We are, after we get through all our questions, we are gonna want to caucus.
Sure,
That
yeah.
wasn't,
Yeah.
that seems like the smart thing to do. I'm just trying to make sure that we get all of our questions
Yeah.
before we caucus.
So the proposal to help certify folks seems intended to certainly fill a need in the district when we have hard to fill positions. Like we definitely want to fill them with people who are certified. We don't want certified folks in there. It doesn't seem to prevent, to help with the teacher retention crisis. So if we're saying, hey, elementary school positions aren't hard to fill, general ed, that still means we may have teachers leaving every year, getting filled by new folks. So this past year, we had 133 teachers turn over. That's 133, that's almost a fourth. And so I'm wondering, I get that we want to certify folks to fill certain vacancies. I don't see how the proposal is going to help folks stay around when there are greener pastures elsewhere. And that's my big question.
It's a great question, and it's a great perspective. The certification incentive is just one part of our proposal. Again, I need to underscore, and I know some folks may disagree, the 20% over 4 years is an aggressive approach to retaining educators. And the longevity, from our perspective, is an aggressive approach to retaining educators. So we're looking at this as a package. We agree that the certification and the other things that came in today are, from my perspective, is value add or addition to our initial proposal to help retain folks. But this hard to fill area is something that this district and others have been talking about for years to recruit and retain, because your initial focus area was recruitment and retention. We're trying to answer both of those questions.
I pose a question about this, the incentive for hard to fill, right? So, okay, we have a hard to fill area that is mathematics. And so I, as a endeavoring person saying, yes, I'm gonna go pursue an extra certification in mathematics. And that's not gonna be immediate. And I don't get any sort of incentive or bonus until that's complete. And we're gonna negotiate these again in 2 years, and math hasn't been filled. So I have started a program, I have invested my funds into that program, and then by the time I'm certified, we've determined it's no longer high needs and there's no incentive.
You know, there's one, we could have some type of application to begin certification, and then we can guarantee you will get that additional compensation once it happens, no matter what happens with the hard to fill area certification. And again, suggest something that will work. All right, this is us, and we are trying to solve the same problem. All right, so if there's a better way to do this, y'all tell us. I'm hoping we don't just pull this off the table, because this is value add, and this is in addition to. So we're here to talk about how to make this work for everybody. Yeah.
I think right now we're trying to, like I said, we saw this for the first time, what, like a half hour ago? So we're trying to understand, you know, and that's why we're asking as many questions as we are, and we have many people to ask questions, so. Tammy, you have them.
Yeah. Dr. Brown, I've heard you talk about being allowed to assign starting salaries on your own, which sounds great for people who come in, but I'm not sure that's really the problem we're trying to address. We do want to recruit, but we want to retain the teachers that we already have. So how does you being able to assign starting salaries help the mid-level curriculum?
Now, we haven't gotten to that proposal about the superintendent being able to assign starting salary. My comments earlier were in response to how do we keep folks here or get folks to come here in that mid-year. And one of those ways would be able to have the superintendent to be able to negotiate. I think the comment was around, we're losing people to a neighboring school district. And when we look at our data, the people we've lost to a neighboring school district were folks who were able to go there and make additional compensation because of the ability of the superintendent to assign a salary. So in response, if I had that same ability to assign a salary to folks, then we could recruit differently, recruit more folks. Our package right now, I hope will keep folks here, because at that 10, 15 year point, you're getting about $3,000 to your base. When looking at what the folks were offered to leave, it was between $3,000 and $10,000 more than what they were making here. So our effort, our attempt to be better. If you have a suggestion, let me know. I think I heard your suggestion was 24% over 3. And we're saying that our school district and community, from the way we're looking at it, can only afford 20% over 4, 19.6 over 4.
I just have one more question. When you say the school district cannot pay for what we are proposing with the step lane and the 8% over 3 years, am I hearing you say that you don't have the ability to pay? I'm just trying to understand for my conversation when we go into caucus.
Yeah, I think
my
what
question.
we're saying is that to pay that would require us to use fund balance, which is not something that we see as a good strategy to pay ongoing costs, recurring costs with fund balance. And the tax cap really does limit us in our ability to raise funds. So those two factors, it just isn't something that we can do.
And just, I mean, I'm not expecting the exact number, but ballpark, what is our current unrestricted fund balance?
About 7 million,
About 7 million.
but that's been allocated to the budget, to support the budget next year.
We're using about $8.7 million to balance our budget year to year. And I'll remind you, your proposal, I appreciated how you added in your proposal how you thought we could pay for it. And you did assume we would be using a significant amount of fund balance, and we were assuming that we would get around 4% increases year to year in state aid. Both things we've never done. I mean, we have not gotten that kind of an increase year to year in state aid, and to use fund balances to fund recurring costs is something we have not done. And frankly, our auditors and fiscal managers would tell us not to do. So appreciative of your approach there, but those are just two approaches to funding it that I'm saying we cannot do.
David, do you have any other immediately necessary questions?
Not at this moment, I need to shuffle through what we have and we need to have some discussion about what's going on in this new proposal.
So I'm gonna call for a caucus.
Let me ask, y'all caucus with everybody in the room too, like this? Everybody?
No.
You might need more time than that.
No.
Okay,
gonna go
this team
through it.
goes someplace else.
Our team is gonna go.
Alright.
We're gonna turn off the live stream. We're gonna set a time to come back and I mean, ITA members are welcome and there's many of them, and I suspect that some people will probably take this as their way to go home after
got
a long day kind of thing. So, Nancy, do you have something before we go?
Thanks for the snack.
Nancy, can you ask it, because I think I know what the follow-up question is. So Nancy's question is, are you open to prorating the 5-year increment bonus? And I bet the question is gonna be, what do you mean by prorate? And that's why I'm asking Nancy.
We're open. Yeah. Thank you, Nancy.
So in other words, you have, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
You have bonuses set at 5-year increments, but would you be open to like breaking out those 5-year between the 5, if someone's at 6 or 7, prorating?
Yeah, that's what I was saying. The money's the money, and how we break it up and how we distribute it is what we can talk about. Yes, we're open to that conversation.
You're saying if someone's at year 6, they wouldn't miss out until they hit year 10.
Yeah.
You-
So they will get a couple hundred to their base, or
And the money is the money. Can you give us that dollar amount again?
19.78 over 4 years.
You have that down, someone in the notes. Perfect.
One clarifying question, Bob. I know you said you can't do that, but the question was, do we have the ability to pay? Or do we?
Yes, we could do it, y'all.
Okay.
And I said, I'll reiterate again, it will be a fiscal crisis. Our bond rating will be affected. We will be asking our community to go over the cap, and we will be making significant reductions to force. And if you want other examples, there are other examples locally, there are other examples across our state, there are other examples nationally. That is a dangerous place for us to go. And again, I think this 20% over 4 is pretty aggressive. We worked for a month to get to this point the last time we negotiated. And we're here now. Thank y'all. What time do you want to come back?
Five 5:45 seems
Cool.
reasonable. Folks at home,
Thank you.
5:45 will be when we come back. And ITA members, you are welcome to join us in a caucus, and we have food if you want. Yesterday, thanking you that there were new details and that you gave us some time to digest. I do just want to remind folks of our working agreements. One of our working agreements was for both sides to be prepared for meetings and that any changes to the agenda be made in writing with at least 48 hours notice. And I know that yesterday we said that that county proposal was still in flux. But because there were 2 substantial pieces to that we just got today, we're not prepared to, like, we haven't had the time to really do the in-depth work to respond in detail now. But luckily, we're doing this again next week, so there will be time. So the certification ask needs more time and thought from us. The tenure achievement needs more time and thought from us. And a number of times over the past 3 meetings, Dr. Brown, you've mentioned superintendent discretion at hiring. Although we haven't seen a formal proposal at this point, we're not really interested in that as a formal proposal. So you can, if you bring it, we will consider it, but we are not interested at that time. As we were talking about your counter proposals, you asked a number of times, you offered us a number of times, come up with a different plan. This is the number, this is the numbers we can work with. What's a different plan? And that is where I give it to my eager friend Brian here, who has a different plan.
So we're going to present today a data-driven case for why competitive salaries are essential to ICSD's future. And our focus is clear. ICSD has to address the teacher retention crisis in a meaningful way and implement sustainable salary increases. So we're all about sustainable. So we're going to kind of recap what we've talked about so far just a little bit. 2 weeks ago, thank you, Chris. ICSD admin proposed their initial salary proposal, which included a 4% raise over 2 years. And this was in line with past increases, but it didn't address the growing concerns about teacher retention. At this stage, ICSD may not have been fully aware of the scope of the turnover crisis in our district. A 4% raise may have been reasonable in a stable environment, but the ITA had already identified that teacher attrition was a significant issue, and retaining experienced teachers requires a salary structure that provides predictability, fairness, and competitiveness, which wasn't reflected in that offer. In response to the ICSD's proposal, ITA presented clear data on teacher turnover, and we outlined a 2-part solution, 2 distinct parts that would directly address teacher retention. First, we proposed transitioning to a step and lane salary structure. The system provides fair, predictable salary growth, and it is already used by most surrounding districts. It allows teachers to see their long-term salary trajectory, which encourages retention. Second, we proposed 8% annual raises over 3 years, average annual raises, to bring ICSD salaries in line with neighboring districts. That was the second distinct component. Without this adjustment, ICSD, we believe, will continue to lose teachers to districts offering more competitive pay. These 2 changes work together, but right now we can talk about step and lane, and we can all insert different percentages. We can talk about step and lane at 2%. We can talk about step and lane at 75%. We can talk about whatever percent and still talk about exclusively step and lane. Step and lane creates stability, competitive salaries, help retain experienced teachers. And the retention crisis demands a real solution. Later in that meeting, the ITA and ICSD agreed to pause negotiations on this topic to allow time for additional research and preparation. And the ICSD expressed the need to better understand step and lane. And they also committed to providing budget data to support a more informed discussion. The pause was intended to give ICSD time to review retention concerns and financial options. Additionally, ICSD agreed to present a counter proposal that would address some of these concerns. And at this stage, we remained optimistic that this will lead to a meaningful discussion about structured salary growth and retention solutions. Yesterday, March 12th, ICSD provided their counter proposal. Their 4% raise remained unchanged, but they introduced the longevity bonus system as a way to encourage retention. And we heard about this tonight. While longevity bonuses do offer some financial incentives over time, they don't provide that structured, predictable salary growth that a step and lane system ensures. Teachers should not have to wait 5 years for salary adjustments that are difficult to plan for. More importantly, ICSD didn't provide the budget data that they agreed to share. Without that financial transparency, it's difficult to assess what the district can truly afford, making it impossible to have a fully informed salary discussion. So at this point, we remained committed yesterday to discussing retention solutions, but we needed more information from the ICSD to move forward. Tonight, and I think Catherine talked about this, the ICSD augmented their counter proposal. So as you just said, we'll read over this and we'll get back to you. Our position remains clear. We're prepared to have informed discussions. We do need clear commitments from the ICSD to show their budget to address salary issues seriously. So tonight, we hope to talk exclusively about Step and Lane until we see those budget numbers. So section 1, a little bit of a review, but a little more in depth too. ICSD is facing this teacher retention crisis. High turnover is disrupting learning. It increases costs. So actually by losing teachers, we are increasing the costs to our families, to the taxpayers, to our community. Losing teachers costs money. Before discussing solutions, we have to understand why teachers are leaving and what's happening in these districts that are offering more competitive pay structures. ICSD's turnover rate is 18%. It's significantly higher than the national average. And every year, ICSD, we know, spends substantial resources recruiting, onboarding new teachers. The cycle's not efficient, it's expensive. Our sources say that we would estimate ICSD spent in the realm of $1.5 million last year to recruit the new teachers to come into our district. And onboard, thank you, and onboard and train. Reducing turnover through better salary structures and compensation will save us money. Nationally, the teacher turnover is projected to be 12%. New York State's average is 14%. Our turnover rate is about 18%, higher than both state and national levels. So we've heard ICSD say there is a teacher shortage, and that's true, but our turnover rate, it's a big problem here. We lost 133 teachers last year. As I said before, that's nearly 1 in 4. It far exceeds state and national averages. It means we're losing teachers faster than other districts. It makes it hard to recruit and retain experienced staff. So without competitive pay and predictable salary growth, we know this trend will continue. I want to talk about tenured teachers. These are typically teachers with 4 or more years experience in the ICSD. There's obviously exceptions. They're essential to school stability. They're essential to student achievement. ICSD has seen a sharp drop in veteran teacher retention from 83% in 2015 to 57% in 2025. It is a retention crisis that we have to address through sustainable salary structures. We have one. It's CAPI, a competitive, attractive, predictable, incentivizing salary system. We believe it'll stop attrition. Last night at the member meeting, just to kind of illustrate this point, we had an all-member meeting. Our many teachers joined online, and we heard an elementary teacher talking with a student about how not a single elementary teacher the student had is still in the school. This is a 5th grade student. And this student was saying, yeah, all my teachers have left. ICSD salaries, they start comparable to neighboring districts, as Dr. Brown has said, as we've said, but they are falling behind over time. Every other district here has a step lane salary system. We don't. ICSD admin at the last meeting said our salaries are competitive within the region. Our data shows they aren't. Yeah, go ahead, Catherine.
So to speak to this point, and we've heard from a number of you, it's been brought up a number of times that part of the reason we lose teachers to our neighboring districts is that superintendent ability to set the starting salary. And I'm going to invite one of our team members, Carrie Glenkio, up to tell her story as someone who has worked in a number of neighboring districts.
Yeah, that's right.
I'm Harry, and I've, let's see, is it
You maybe just have to get closer.
Oh, okay. So I taught for a number of years for the Ithaca City School District, and I love this school district. I taught for 12 years here. I was recruited to another neighboring district, and it was just based on their second lane system. The times that I've moved, I haven't gotten any extra bump. It just was their second lane system that was there. And it was fairly significant. When I returned back to ICSD, because I'm in a shortage area, I was able to do an extra class and things like that. And it still didn't make up back to that salary. For some family reasons, it still made sense for me to come back here, but to be able to stay here is really difficult. And when I look at the teachers who stayed in neighboring districts where I am, who don't have as many graduate credits as I do, who don't have as many years of experience, and they're making significantly more, we work really hard here. We are really solid teachers, and I know you value us. So I just really would love it if we can find a way to retain our best teachers. Thanks.
Thanks, Carrie.
So we have identified the teacher retention crisis in the ICSD, and our next step is to talk about solutions. So what can we do to attract retain experienced teachers and attract new talent? The answer starts and ends with step and lane. It ensures predictability, fairness, stability. It's not the only piece of the puzzle. It's distinct from salary, but it's the foundation for building a salary system that retains educators. So we want to take a little bit of a look at why it's so critical for the ICSD. As we said 2 weeks ago, it can provide competitive salaries. It can provide attractive career paths. Teachers need to see their future at the ICSD. Raises should be structured and stable on one easily digestible chart. And it's incentivizing. They stay longer when they know their salary will grow. This is why most surrounding districts already use step and lane. It works. So we're teachers. We've decided to make a rubric, and we've shown that ICSD salaries haven't kept pace with district growth and that teacher compensation remains unpredictable. A step lane salary structure solves this. It ensures predictability. It ensures competitiveness. It incentivizes long-term commitment. The ICSD's counterproposal, longevity bonuses, does not provide a real solution. While the ICSD's proposed bonuses would increase, like for example, this year, if we kept the current system, the longevity bonuses would add up to about $10,000. We would pay those in longevity bonuses to members hitting 10 or 11 and 21 years. Under the ICSD system, the new proposed system that we heard tonight, members would receive about $144,000 next year in longevity bonuses. That is not the right tool to fix salary compression or retention. So a step lane system isn't just about fairness. It's about ensuring that ICSD remains a destination for talented educators. So we propose implementing this structure to end salary compression, to make pay competitive and retain great teachers. ICSD leadership has claimed that step and lane is not an option for our district, but here's the truth, most districts already use it. So I want to go back to what was said a couple of weeks ago and talk about why these arguments aren't exactly true. ICSD admin said, at the end of the day, we can't put a step and lane system and then put it in front of our community, a bill that they can't pay. And in the reality, step and lane does not cost more than ICSD's current system. Many districts around us manage it within their budgets. We also heard ICSD admin say we haven't seen teachers leaving because another district offers step and lane. We just heard from Carrie, we have many more cases of teachers leaving specifically for those districts, not because of the superintendent privilege and offer, but because of the attractive salary systems and salaries. We have been conducting interviews for the past 3 years of our members who exit. The key reason teachers are leaving, they said, is because these other districts offer predictable salary growth and more competitive salaries. 25 out of 34 neighboring districts, these are within an hour, already use this structure. This is why our teachers are leaving ICSD. ICSD is competing for teachers against districts that offer a clear and structured pay system. And if we don't act now, we'll continue to lose talent. In our last session, ICSD representatives claim that no teachers have left for step and lane districts. And again, we know many folks who have. Here are some quotes from former ICSD teachers. I will. Thank you. I left for Lansing because I could see my entire salary trajectory from day one. Tried the step lane system. I didn't have to renegotiate my worth every contract cycle. And at ICSD, I never knew where I'd be financially in 5 years. Now I do. So we must stop losing teachers to these predictable salary structures. It's not just about fairness, it's about retention. We want to commit to a salary system that keeps the ICSD competitive. Step lane works. Let's make it happen. We've laid out the facts. We've shown that ICSD is losing teachers and that step and lane is the best way to fix that. Most of our neighboring districts have made the switch or have kept it from many years ago. It works. It provides predictability, fairness, competitiveness. It's not about long-term debates. This is about taking action right now to retain great teachers and keep ICSD strong. We can agree to step lane tonight. Let's make ICSD a district where teachers build their careers, not just pass through. It's a pivotal moment. We can make a structural change that will truly address our retention crisis or just continue business as usual. We want to talk step and lane. We want to leave 4 versus 8 out of it tonight. So that's our presentation for why we should have step and lane. I'm there.
Thank you. Maybe we have some clarifying questions. I have a few, and I'm sure my team does as well. Before I ask my questions, there are a couple of, I was trying my best to follow you, Brian. You had a couple of questions in there early that you wanted us to answer before we could talk about salary anymore. One was around financials. We didn't bring a financial presentation tonight because that would have taken hours. Now, our audit is publicly available. We will email that to you tonight. Our last year's budget is publicly available. We would email that to you tonight. Our financials are there for everyone. I wouldn't be providing you with anything in addition to what we already have out there very publicly that addresses our fund balances, our line items, and everything else. There is nothing missing. So I apologize if you were anticipating we were going to come do a budget presentation tonight instead of getting right to the money. So we will send you the links that are already there.
I just want to make sure. I certainly have seen many of the documents you're talking about, maybe all of them. What we need is more of a line item than even was presented at Tuesday's board meeting. So Tuesday's board meeting, there was the big buckets, the lines for admin, the lines for instructional salaries. We need them broken down to the level of about what we might see in the expenditures of your budget. So if you go on the past years on your website, we see 2025 and the big expenditures. It's about like 6 pages long, and it has item 1010, item 1020, item 1025. We need it at about that level. And I'm going to say why. We need it at that level because just one of many big questions we have after looking at the many documents is we know building aid is decreasing, right? The building aid from state aid. We also know that capital expenditures are increasing. We have questions about why are the capital expenditures increasing? I'm not trying to say anything nefarious is going on. I'm simply saying, what are these capital projects? And it's muddy based on the slide that was presented on Tuesday night. So we need more of that line by line.
Understood. And like we've
For that
done,
and many other
what
reasons.
we've done with other items that are muddy and complicated and complex and require hours of conversation, I would suggest that you and whoever else from your team maybe connect with the business office and others from our team to engage in a Q&A. I'm struggling with how that would look in this kind of a meeting when we're
I
negotiating.
think that's a good idea. I mean,
Okay, and get every question
Tammy
you
and
have
Catherine,
answered.
I don't want to like break protocol, but that's a reasonable idea to me, having a Q&A with whomever.
Yeah, I agree. I think what we're really looking for is the decrease in building aid. Why is that? Like, is there a project that is nearing completion or is there a project that just was completed? I mean, that would, to me, that would tell me that's why the reduction.
Cool.
So I think that's the kind of.
So we're not
information
debating whether or not
looking
building
for.
aid decreased. You want to know
You're not
why.
debating, right.
And let's be clear, the building aid is not because of what we did on our end. The state gives that money or doesn't, all right?
Absolutely. They give it based on need. So I'm wondering if they're not giving it, maybe the need is not there anymore. That's what we're trying to dive into.
Cool.
Okay.
That's the
But
conversation we can
I
have.
think that's a good idea, to
Perfect.
just have that conversation in private, right? And not, like, in other words, not here.
Right.
So, oh, go ahead.
No,
Do you have more
please,
questions?
go for it. No. I do, but I'll do it after you.
Well, maybe I'll say mine first and then that'll help us know where to go. To be 100% transparent, we have been charged by our members to stay the course in continuing to negotiate for a step and lane. Brian very wisely said, a step and lane can work at any percentage. And tell us what percentage you want to see and we will make up the grids for you and bring them next week. But at this point, in order for us to continue to have the conversation about salary in an efficient way that respects everybody's time, we would need a commitment to exploring the step and lane further as a viable solution.
And that's my clarifying question. I and our team, we're very aware of what a step and lane system is. And there is a reason why this district has never had one. We can get in, well, I'll just say. and-
We have had one.
Yeah,
Um,
a long time. Let's go back.
Okay,
What was the year? Remember, tell me what year? In the 60s.
60, 70.
All right.
David, I'm gonna let you speak to where we would be right now if we still had it, because you did that math.
Oh, sure. I mean, what are we looking at? I've got years of service through 11 because that's how many years of service were in that initial grid. But it has so I mean, just looking at their step and lane and adjusting for inflation, if you have someone who has 0 graduate credits, but one in their first year of service, their starting is 55,878 and 17 cents. After 11 years with 0 graduate credits, 81,113 and 47 cents. So that's adjusting, that's using the, what did I use for this? I wrote it down here. There's my methodology. So I use the calculator available through the US Bureau of Labor and Statistics to calculate the inflation rate from 1968 to calculate it for July of 2024. That way I was at the starting.
The $81,000 number is what again? If it was the start,
If we're, our starting salary, when adjusted for inflation, so 1 year of service, so your first year of service, no graduate credits, 55,878. And then at 11 years, 81,113.
and what's our, that's what the steps doesn't have.
That was the 1968 system adjusted for.
And our
inflation.
current salary today.
Oh, hold on, I have that. If you were in 11 years of service with no graduate credits, right now you would make 59,291. That was with the salary grade for the 24-25 starting school year. Sure, so 0 graduate credits using the 24-25 starting grade at 11 years, 59,291. 81,113, it's a difference of 31%.
Which is a little bit of a side quest, but just to acknowledge that, to say
Yeah.
we've never had a step and lane
No.
is inaccurate. And by taking the step and lane that our bargaining unit originally negotiated and looking at if we had maintained that step and lane, and none of us, that was done in the 60, none of us were sitting in any of these seats, none of us own that decision. And the implication of that decision, we can see that where we are now, especially for our mid-career educators, is incredibly different than where we would have been had we had a step and lane system to allow people reliable growth over time.
just to be clear though, over time, negotiations in places that have step, we have a lane system. So we're not even talking about adding, we currently have a lane system. Negotiations in districts that have a step system is whether or not those steps go up right. So the negotiations just simply shift. To take a 1968 and just say everything would have remained the same lands you in a place that just
Right.
wouldn't be realistic.
We just took what they had in 68 and
Right.
adjusted it to today's money.
Yeah.
Bob, can I just respond to that,
Yeah.
that thing? We do have lanes now. I would say we don't have the benefit of a step and lane system with lanes because nobody is on that chart. So it's true, we move over lanes with graduate credit. But what the grid shows, the power of the grid, as I showed a couple weeks ago, is your ability to predict where you will be. And the lanes don't show that. So yes, we have lanes. Yes, that's one of the 3 words in step and lane. But I would say it doesn't get at the essence of what we're trying to do.
I mean, it only predicts to the extent that future negotiations maintain the same raises within the step system. That's where the negotiations start to hit, right?
Yeah,
So you might have, I mean,
that's
your
right.
current one has 1.5% roughly in between your steps. In the next round of negotiations, you're going to seek to move that up to 2, 3, 4%. And that's where the negotiations shift from, I mean, that's the only way to negotiate steps. Your steps do not, if you're saying your steps will stay at 1.5% from now until infinity, then we do have some place to talk then.
So I just want to be clear. So what other districts around us do is they have their steps. They do not negotiate the distance between steps, or let's try making the steps farther apart. They typically negotiate a bundle raise, right? Saying we're to move this whole chart up X%, whether it's 1.5, whether it's 2, whether it's 3, whether it's 4. So if everybody grows 4%, then you still have 1.5 between the lanes. So we would be seeking to build a step lane system and then live in a world where we say we will.
I think also more.
Hold on for a second. I just want to make sure am I making sense with that? So
think
you're
so.
not seeking to change the difference between the steps, but simply after the step and lane system's in place, after this contract, to begin to ask for appropriate raises on the system. The second thing I would say is that it's true that if I look right now at year 25 on our proposed system, it's true that in 25 years, hopefully we would have gotten some raises on that. So it's not a true indicator of where I would be. But psychologically, it helps me think in today's dollars, okay, I know what $100,000 is worth today. That feels right. It feels good. I want to stay. And then hopefully the grid would move up commensurate with cost of living.
I think it's important that it really doesn't matter how other districts negotiate their staffing. We, as an autonomous school district, and have the ability to negotiate our step and lane in the way that we all see fit. Right now, what we're trying to do is create a successor agreement of 3 to 4 years for right now. In a couple of years, we'll come back to the table, and that would be the time to say, okay, over 3 years, we took an aggressive approach to fix a long-term salary problem, to stabilize the earnings of all of our teachers, to create equity for all of our teachers, to end the things where more senior teachers are making less money than newer teachers. And this is why I think I hear you about not dipping into the fund balance, and just thinking from like a personal finance standpoint, when my washing machine breaks, it is an emergency that I use my savings for, because it is a one-time expenditure on buying the new washing machine to fix the problem of not having a washing machine. We are asking to fix over 3 years to fix the systemic problem to the way that we are being compensated for our work. And then in our proposal, 3 years, we would come back to the table and say, hey, now that we've leveled the playing field, what's a reasonable increase? How much bigger do we want to make the playing field?
That's right.
Yeah.
And that is the time to talk about, is this going to increase by 1%, 2%, 3% on the grid? But what it does for us as employees is every year that we stay here, we are guaranteed a higher salary because it is on that grid. That is what our people don't have. And that is why we are losing people as quickly as we are losing them.
Could I ask a clarifying question? Because we talked in our break. The way that ITA and ICSD had previously negotiated the contract and the starting grid, it was not possible for a teacher with the same amount of credits who came to the district with the same number of years or less years to earn more than a current teacher. Can maybe, and I know I'm catching a cold with the question, but if you sort of like help us understand how did that happen? Because previously we negotiated so that it couldn't happen.
Just want to make sure I heard your question. You got a little quiet there for me.
I'm sorry.
You're saying like, if a teacher came in at 10 years experience, how could they be possibly making more than somebody who's already here with 15 years experience? Am I hearing?
Yeah, if they're on the same, if they have the same number of credits.
If they have the same number of credits. In that,
I can explain. how
yeah,
it happens.
yeah.
And
I have it
I'm
too.
not a numbers
So go
person,
for
and
it.
I can explain how it happens.
Thank you.
Go for it.
So when member came in when the member came in
Oh.
7 years ago,
Right.
they came in at a starting salary. That starting salary received small percentage increases, smaller than the percentage increases at the person who came in later. So if
That's right.
you came in 10 years ago and got 2%, 2%, 2%, your overall salary has grown by a certain amount.
Okay.
If
Okay.
you came in 5 years ago at a similar starting salary, which is actually now a higher starting salary because we negotiated a higher starting salary, our last negotiation did focus on getting that base salary up. So our base salary has boosted, and then you got 4%, 4%, 4%. You are now making more money. I will not name the names.
Right.
And I almost said to Brian, this
Right.
person, because we have a spreadsheet of everybody in our unit, their salary, their years of service, when they were hired. I know a 7-year member who is making over $3,000 less than a 3-year member with the same number of credits because they are alphabetically together.
You're also what?
What?
What was the last few words?
They're alphabetically one after the other.
Okay.
You know that because you see them
Because
together in the
because I
spreadsheet.
see it on a
Right.
spreadsheet where this person with 3 years and 32 credits has a salary that is over $3,000 higher than the next
Sure.
person alphabetically with 7 years and the same number.
So, clarifying questions. When folks join us, it might be, and I know you all have that spreadsheet. So some folks will come in from, let's say, another school district, move from New York City, whatever. They'll come in, they might start on year 3. In our system, it'll say they're now on year 5 years later. Are you accounting for their previous experience when we're looking at that?
Yes, and
Cool, okay.
yeah,
So I got it. That's all.
Yes.
I just wanted to
Yeah.
understand.
Yes, and that is a big cause of the problem. I mean, not our accounting of that, but again, that they're coming in with experience and they haven't suffered under the salary compression that members who have been here for a long time have. So again, if I had to make a rule of thumb, it would be that members who have put in many years in the ICSD are in general worse off than people with the same experience, same years of same experience, same graduate credits as those who came in or are benefiting from some of our better negotiated salaries of the past 6
And then
years.
again, just a clarifying question to understand. Sometimes you'll have 2 teachers, 9 years experience, same number of grad credits. teacher one came in with those grad credits, right? So they'll be on a further lane. Teacher two got those grad credits in year 8 or 9 and made it over there. Teacher one will, because of compounding interest over those 9 years. So that can also, again, not saying this doesn't happen, just trying to
So in your
talk about different
example,
cases.
of course, the person who got the grad credit sooner
Yeah.
probably should have more lifetime earnings, right? Because they got it sooner, they taught in the class with that great experience, and they should have earned more. But at this point, if I've taught 15 years and I have 9 grad credits, I should be making the same as my neighbor who just got the 9 credits yesterday in terms of my salary. I may have more lifetime earnings, but my neighbor should be there with me.
So effectively, you're saying you have members who, if they were to be rehired today on the starting grade, their salary would be less than.
Not effectively, that's exactly what we're saying. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So
We also, just yesterday, one of our team members said, I looked at the starting salary, they were hired within the last 5 years, and they're like, if I quit my job today and got rehired as a new hire, I would make more money as a new hire than I am currently making. Their offer letter would be for a higher salary.
And we have lots of these cards that have come up from people in this room just saying, I'm one of those people, I'm one of those people. And I want to get back to what you said earlier, Dr. Brown, and you were talking, I think you were saying in a cautionary tone, we talked about this 6 years ago when we were at the table negotiating the contract, saying we knew then we needed to prioritize on newer members, and we knew we'd have to come back and fix the middle and long. I hope I'm paraphrasing you right.
Somewhat, yeah. You've been, yeah, just keep going.
Yeah,
And put
so
your perspective on the
we
table.
feel like this is like the perma fix. We feel if you go to, we don't feel, we more than feel, we have evidence that if you go to Step and Lane, we will not be back here in 5 years saying, oh, now the middle is higher than the high, and now the 25, like it's endgame. We feel the Step and Lane, everybody is on that grid, and there is no more of this conversation.
We may need just a moment to caucus in a second, but again, I was in the middle of some clarifying questions. I just want to get those out there. Because one, we have tried hard to stay away from comp for a particular reason.
Can you say that one more time?
Comparables.
Yeah.
And I just gotta, when we put up an average salary using a data source, you gotta know there are other data sources that creep. So at some point, I want to share, when I say this, that our salaries are competitive and we're not significantly below the region. I want people to know that I'm speaking from some data, and I recognize you have some different data as well. And we will share our chart, and we can get into the length of a school day. We can look at, I mean, we're talking about contracts, y'all, and there's so much in these individual contracts. There are additional benefits that our folks have that other folks, like the conversation is hard. So when we say that Ithaca City School District is significantly paid less than anybody else, and we don't account for all the other stuff in the contract, nor the different data sources, that's just problematic. Now, I don't want to get into a counterpoint. I just want to note that, and you brought your data to the table, and I would bring ours. But I don't want people hearing me saying that we're competitive with our salaries, and other folks saying, no, you're not, and you put up a data source and I'm not putting up mine. That's just a clarifying question, a clarifying statement.
I understand.
Well, I think it's also important to know, so in my seat, I often field emails that are, can you help me understand why my salary is what it is? I've been working here this many years and I have this many credits and I don't get why my salary is this. And what I explain to them is that, well, in order to calculate your salary, we need to know what year were you hired? What were the raises because what year were you hired dictates what was your base when you started. Then what was the percentage increase every year that you've been working here? When did you get your salary increments? What did they add to your base at that time? Because what was the salary increment incentive at the time that you got it? And then we need to do like hand math for every year that you've been here, because every single employee in our unit has to be individually calculated in that way in a salary review. And I often just say, here's the link to the salary review request, put in an HR ticket and HR will do it. And then we're relying on accuracy of records from HR, which, you know, depending on the length of time that you've been here, those records could be super accurate or maybe not as accurate, but it really is every single person is a case by case individual. This is why your salary is what it is. I cannot answer those questions for people ever because we do not have a system that allows me to answer those questions. A step and lane allows people to go, I'm year 11 with 32 credits. This is what I should be making, to look at their paycheck and say, that's right, or that's not right. And if it's not right, to fill out an HR ticket to say, why is this not right? And we have a place to go. We have a reasonable conversation.
And thank you, Cap. And that's my other clarifying statement. I think we need to be precise in our language for folks watching at home and for the folks at this table. One, we have a lane system already, but this notion of a step, I think we need to clarify what that means. There are folks who are in our community right now who are saying, heck no, no steps whatsoever, because they see it as an automatic increase of compensation every year forever without having to negotiate. When I respond with, well, we've had at least a 2% increase every year and we're looking at 4 and 5, then they get fuzzy. So, but what you're describing now is just a more predictable way to get people onto the scale.
Yes, that's
That
right.
is really what
And
we
so
are asking for.
we're going to caucus and I think we need to spend some time talking about what it is we're trying to get to. And maybe we change the name, because I think the step system is I hate to use this term when talking about it, is a trigger for folks. They see it as a superintendent and a board binding a future superintendent and a board to salary increases without anybody ever coming back to this table. And that's why they've said no. And when I respond with, well, we've come to the table and we've had at least 2% raises and now we're doing even more anyways.
I mean, with a contract that has like 97 pages of articles, I don't think we're ever in danger of not having to renegotiate.
That's why I think we need to get tight on what it is we're talking about. And if it's the language we need to shift, which we've done here by having working agreements versus ground rules, we got to do that. Because from my perspective, Brian, it was tough for me to see on the screen all the things that you felt like we didn't do when we worked our butts off for the last week to figure out how we can provide you with a predictable approach to compensation increase. And from our perspective, you were getting 4% over the next 4 years, and then we were throwing a whole lot of money into the folks who decided to stay with us. So if anybody saying that we didn't do our due diligence, I'm not saying you're saying that, but I did see a lot of no's on here. If you stay with us 10 years, you're going to get a significant amount in your base. You stay here 15 years, you're going to get a significant amount in your base. And for us, and for me, I now know, and we have a daggone calculator we use ChatGPT to help us with, but we have a calculator where everybody in here can put their salary and their years of service and their daggone name in it and can tell how much money they're going to make for the next 30 years. So I can't hear you say that our approach to this is not predictable and does not include some significant pay increases because it's already built in.
Yeah, sometimes the analog method, I mean, we may be at a point where we're talking about really a grid on a page, and sometimes the analog method of opening to your grid and putting your finger on the grid is just immediate to folks in a way that a salary calculator is not. And if they both cost zero, if both of these are just ways to implement a salary.
It's ways of looking at it. And you said you're going to do this before we get to the 4 and 8%. The percentage does matter because one of the things that our community is going to struggle with is we're saying that the step would guarantee 4 or 8% every year. And that would be problematic. So, and if I'm hearing you say, let's clarify the scale and then talk about dollars. Or you're saying that it's going to start at 4%, the scale and the increases in the step.
So our proposal right now is 2 parts. It is to build the system. That is critically important to us, to build the system where we move away from a just starting grid, but to a predictable grid that everyone is. We, having done the math, in order to get that to be competitive, attractive, and incentivizing, and to really take an aggressive investment in fixing the problem, it would take 8% a year over 3 years to entirely fix the problem. That's where the 8% came from.
Okay.
We can run that grid at any percentage you want us to. The grid is critically
I
important.
got you. So the grid could be at 1%.
That would likely not solve our problem.
I agree. I agree. But at the end of the day, we still at a dollar amount. So to have this conversation about whatever the grid's gonna look like, and then we get hung up on 8% a year, which I'm telling you, the community can't afford.
Yeah,
It's just gonna be an issue.
I just also want to say, we know that nobody in this room, whether it's board members, admin, would ever advocate to our community that we're going to have teachers sitting on no raise when the cost of living goes up at least a penny. So it feels like this to say that a step system makes the district beholden to paying teachers year after year, increasing amounts. As Catherine said, like, we know at the end of the contract, we're gonna talk about negotiating a raise, and there would never be in a world which we said, well, things are good, we're gonna stay at flat salaries. So our community, I can't imagine this hypothetical community member coming up and saying, how dare you get a 0.2% raise? Like, it seems like they know teachers get raises. We know every worker in the world gets raises.
That's why I think it's about language. That's why we gotta
Yeah.
be clarify what
Yeah.
we're talking about. We're talking about a salary grid, and then we're talking about rate.
Are you feeling like you want to caucus now, or you?
I was feeling like that like
Wait,
20 minutes ago, but I just,
I
y'all,
just have
yeah.
one point of order.
For me?
When you were talking about comps and saying you don't like that because you're just looking at salary, I want to assure you, we don't just look at salary. When something seems off, it could be because their health insurance is way low or their health insurance is way high. Could be the length of their school day, the length of their school year. We're well aware that there are other factors that go into comps that will impact the total salary.
Thank you, Kim. And before we leave then, Zach, you have that other data source we use. We use a state source.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah. Good.
Can you
Yeah,
share?
this is just state, it's like when every year when districts submit their information, this is from 2023-24 salaries. And it's not up on our big screen here, but it is online. But what you'll see here is Ithaca City School District, there's an orange dot. Oh, actually, let me connect real quick. There's an orange dot and there we go. And that's the number of teachers we have. So we employ over 500 teachers. And then in terms of salaries, you see Ithaca falls in between. It's a little over 65,000. So right around the middle of all the districts in our region. So that's from the state data. We use Forecast 5 data.
And it is important to note the number of FTE in there.
Totally. This is a great graph. Like, hopefully next week we'll talk about salary in depth. And this is so valuable for that. I do feel like bringing it up tonight makes it sound like teachers aren't leaving. Like, see,
I don't.
That's not,
Yeah.
what I was trying to say at all.
No. This was just you gave us several data sets. I'm just saying,
Yeah, we
if you're
should consider-
asking, we're using data as
I got
well,
it.
and this is what we look.
Thank you.
The grid system doesn't stop teachers from leaving. Teachers leave these other districts that have the grid system. What then becomes a competitive factor when you have grid systems is how fast teachers reach the top of the grid. And so there will always be this competition between districts, right? Even on a grid system, we will have teachers leaving for better grid systems. And that's just the nature of the business. So it's not a panacea for people leaving. It's just changing the parameters of what the competition looks like.
But we do hear consistently in exit interviews, and our exit interview process is robust. We do one-on-one, face-to-face conversations. We have multiple questions. Those conversations typically take about an hour to 2 hours to talk about all of the various parts of the ICSD experience. From those exit interviews, and I'm looking at Aurora, hoping that she can give me a ballpark of like how many we've done. No, okay. Last time I checked, I know that it was like more than 50. Definitely more than 50. how 70 or 80 in the past like 3 or 4 years. Yeah. Yeah. Consistently, our teachers who are leaving are saying, I don't know what I'm ever going to make. I can't guarantee that I'm going to keep moving forward. Having to go to the table and beg for a raise every single time, and knowing that if the team isn't successful, we could get nothing, or it could be 2% every year for 10 years, which many of our mid-career people lived through the 2% world, hoping that every single time we came back to the table, that it would get better, and it didn't get better, and it didn't get better, and it didn't get better. And now we're here 15, 18 years in with super compressed salaries.
Yeah.
And people look and they take that experience. We also live in Ithaca, which last I checked was the second highest city cost of living city in the state. We can't live in the city. We can't live in the community that we serve. We can't guarantee that our pay is going to increase over years. And when we're looking at how do I have a career? How do I plan a pension? How do I plan retirement? How do I plan my life? With no ability to plan because the system does not give us an ability to plan, the grass looks greener in other places.
A couple things just to clarify. Brian mentioned the 133 teachers left in a year, and I appreciate that there's often misspeak. It was over 2 years, right? There was a year with 90 and a year with 40, or whatever the math is. We didn't lose 133 teachers last year.
Yeah.
That was over a 2-year period. And one of those years was higher than normal. We typically lose somewhere around 50 teachers a year, and typically 30 to 40% of that is retirements. And then if you'd want to take a look at the remaining, what's left of 30, typically we ask 5 to 8 to leave.
Last year is an anomaly because of the budget cuts, which reduced our overall staff.
This
So the
is what
number-
I was
Yeah, but
trying to avoid, y'all.
90
It's
is
not
high.
about comparing data, say, sources right now. We know teacher attrition is an issue all over the country and here. We need to pay educators more everywhere in the country and here. We're trying to get to that point. That's what I'm saying. I want to pay more. I don't like anybody leaving unless they're retiring, like Jill, and then come back on the board, all right? So, and what happens is we gotta be better.
And for us, it's not just the more,
Right.
it's the predictability.
I hear you. And I also hope
And
you
you
heard us.
focus.
We tried to give some predictability. It's just not quite what you want.
Yeah.
And I want to talk to my team about how I think we're saying the same things or not. And where we're not, then that may be what we do over the next week.
I
So,
think
Yeah.
yeah, but we don't need a lot of time though, because I'm getting hungry.
the other thing,
Sorry.
just to remind folks too, all those years where we negotiated 2, 2, 2, and 2, the district cannot impose contracts on any of our bargaining units. I just want people to understand that dynamic. Those were collectively bargained, agreed to, voted by membership, voted by the board. And there was a lot of other things that were in a give and take. It wasn't just the 2% salary. Right, just wanted folks to understand that.
Yeah, we were getting 2% raises while most places were laying off. It was a recession. And then gap elimination is that. Just to remind folks who didn't know why we were doing 2% increases only. There was a lot happening. All right, 7 o'clock, or do you need some more?
No, we're fine. I'm just wondering, do we also want to, we have a couple of people who have come today to speak to some of the like backup proposals we had on our agenda. So maybe, because we said if our salary discussions stall, we want to make the most of our time until 8 o'clock. I'm just wondering, do you anticipate that we're going to keep talking salary until 8 o'clock?
I do.
Because those people might go home.
Yeah, come back if they
prepare
can.
for
I
the
have
next
no
one.
idea, so I'm not gonna look up, but maybe next Thursday they come.
Okay, how long do you want?
And maybe next Thursday we can then, because this was all about salary, so supposed to be. So next Thursday we can start with them and get to whatever salary stuff. Cool?
Perfect. What time do you want?
7 o'clock. Yeah, thank you. Question, Brian, because you said this can work with any of those percentages, can you bring us back a salary grid or get it to us before the next meeting? And then we talk about it at the next meeting, what a salary grid system would look like. at the 19.68 percentage over 4 years, evenly distributed, so that we can finance it. We won't be able to finance 18% in year one, and then one over the next 3 years. So we're looking at something 4 years, evenly distributed, a grid system that you will propose.
Yeah.
And the sooner you get that to us, the better, all right?
Great.
Hope that is clear.
So just to restate, what I just wrote on my paper was open to discussing a grid system, and you want to see our proposal for a grid system that would do, I rounded it up to 20%, but it's 19 point what?
6-8.
6.8, right? And we're-
19.68% over 4 years.
Years. And this is a big one. I'm already getting text messages. So as we get through this part, when thinking about all the other things we got to talk about, we're gonna have to accelerate some stuff to get this done. Anyway, we got a lot on the table to talk, y'all. And this is a big ask, and will be a big move for our organization. But we're open to it.
I think that once we finish this conversation,
Yeah.
if it goes in the direction that it sounds like we're going in, a lot of we'll reassess a lot of the original proposal book as well, which should help things flow a little bit more
Yeah.
smoothly and expeditiously.
Yeah.
Think that's what it is?
It is, yeah.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
It is.
All right. Let's do other clarifying questions, and we're gonna go finish some stuff. Maybe y'all.
Can I make two quick points? I was watching in the back, and it's a hard thing to. So I had two thoughts. I don't know if that might clarify some of the dialogue. It might not. Here are my two thoughts. As I listened in the back,
Turn the microphone down a little bit, point it down so that it doesn't feed back off the
Oh.
speakers.
okay, how's this? Nice.
Perfect.
I had two thoughts as I listened to the dialogue in the back that may resolve, I may not. One is that there was a good bit of talk about the difference between like the percent raise we're asking and the steps year to year. I just wanted to clarify that the percent raise that we would get is based on the different grids that would be present in each of the years of the contract. So the individual steps have fairly small gradation between like year 10, 11, 12. If we were asking for an 8% raise, it would be because, you know, our grid for the second year is on average 8% higher than our grid for the year before it. And the third grid would be yet another new grid, if that makes sense. The percentages come from no? So our proposal was for a 3-year contract with an average 8% raise each year and a step and lane system. We think of those as separate things. We're excited that you're willing to consider a step and lane system. The difference between that and our raises, there was question about how big are our steps going to be? Are we going to try to put 3, 4, 5, 6, 8% in between steps? And the answer is no. In year 1, there's a salary grid. Year 2, the salary grid is different. It's an 8% average increase across all steps. And in year 3, it's another new salary grid with the percentage being different, not between the steps, but between the different grids. Well, that's our 8% raise. If the district, like when we run the numbers
Yeah,
on a 4% raise, we'll have 3 different grids with 4% between the different years.
I'm gonna take a page out of the Dr. Brown playbook. When someone gives you something you want, you say thank you.
Oh, you missed.
I think that we don't have to sell this concept any harder. We just received we are open to a grid system. We want to see what it would look like within the budget parameters that we are giving you. I see Brian already doing math, and I think that's a little premature. We don't need it right now.
When you said eager.
A week,
Very
a
eager.
week from now, we will bring you, earlier tonight you said, this is the number and we're open to how you want to make it work,
Yeah.
how you want to distribute it. We will come back with how we want to distribute it. We might, when we see that, ask ourselves, does this really solve the problem? And if we feel like it doesn't really solve the problem, we might come back with another version as well, that we might give you a couple versions, but we will do what you said. We appreciate it. Thank you. I am a little nervous to end an hour early when we do have a number of other things, but I also know that there's a choir concert and
Yeah.
and that we just really made some huge progress tentatively moving forward. So thank you.
Cool. Thank you all. It's been a long day for everybody. Again, thank you for being here.
What? I mean, I'm willing to stay and do the backup stuff. We do have some backup stuff. Yeah, that we prepared for this express purpose of we have. I mean, it's 7:06 and at 7:45, we need to set agenda for next week, but we do have a half hour, 40 minutes. to talk.
I'm requesting the additional time to talk with my team about some stuff, if that's all right. Again, I think our caucus was cut short. I have given you the question and what we would like you to bring back, but there's some things I still want to talk to the team while I have it about.
Okay, so then why don't we just finalize the agenda for
Yeah.
next time? You said that we can take those proposals 23 through 31
Yeah,
and put those at the beginning.
Yeah.
So that our guests who
Right.
want to come and speak to them can speak to them. And then we should at that point have a use of district email for union business, and you're going to get us the micro credential so we can add that onto the agenda. And then we'll take a look at Ryan's work on the salary.
yeah.
Um,
Can you
I-
get that? Can you
yeah,
get that
and
in that time? Yeah.
yeah, and I think that will probably take a full 4 hours, but also the next place that we want to go is having those conversations about length of day, use of day, Wednesday meetings. I had a meeting with a principal today about, here's what I'm thinking for a master schedule next year. But I know that there's a lot of proposals on the table that could affect a master schedule next year, and recognizing that if we want our people to know what their schedules look like by June, that we really need to start having those conversations as soon as possible.
Yeah.
So 23 through 31 and the additional ones from here first, salary next week. And I will get a draft copy of the written agenda into everybody's inboxes probably tomorrow.
Thank you.
Catherine, or anybody, is it appropriate now to set that time
Okay.
for me to come meet and talk about finances? Is that a you and I thing, Zach? Or you, me and
Absolutely,
Zach?
sure.
So
I
by
think we have
email,
an
right?
open invitation that was sent out
Excuse
last
me?
week. I think we have an open invitation that we sent out to you last week via email. So if you want to respond to that, we'll set up a date. And
You have an open invitation.
Yeah, I sent you an email
Yeah.
to talk about this
Yes.
Why
previously.
let you
That's all.
talk
Sure.
closer to each other?
Just maybe, but Brian, though, if you could maybe send some questions, because while the answers are transparent, sometimes they're complicated. So rather than ask the questions at the meeting, we can have stuff prepared to respond and talk about
We are talking about now the salary.
whatever you need from us in terms of budget.
Yes, I
monies.
understand.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
And Bob, we'll meet on Monday. We have that on, we have a calendar meet for Monday
Yes.
to talk about those other two that we're in process
Yeah.
of.
Okay.